What's good, you guys? Your boy HB, final round. Shitty ass ladder. Anyways. Look, man, fights tonight. It's going down. Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. I'm going to try to make my final prediction of what I've seen. This is a shit show, man. It's so hard to make a prediction about this fight. Now, granted, I might have to make another video because I did hear rumors that maybe Tyron Woodley is going to release some footage before the fight of him training. I don't really care about training. I want to see sparring. So if at some point in the day or right before the fight, Tyron Woodley releases the videos of what he did in terms of sparring, then and I can make the video before the fight goes down, it might drastically change my opinion and who I think is going to win. I'm sorry, you guys. I could be wrong about this. I could be fucking wrong. You know, like I said, it's hard to assess this because I don't know what fucking Tyron Woodley is going to bring to the boxing ring. You know, and even Jake Paul, we don't know how much he's transformed since his last fight. And he doesn't have this big, wide resume against a bunch of different fighters to where we know what else he's going to bring to the table, because obviously he's still coming up in the game. You know, he's going to be adding more to it. I mean, one of the next things he can do to improve his boxing is throwing a good left hook. I don't think he has a good left hook right now. I hate when he throws in his training, just like his brother. I hate the way they throw their left hooks. It's like these wide, loopy punches, lots of fat on them. It's not like a tight left hook. You know, it's like more like a slapping left hook. And, you know, that's something Jake Paul is going to need to improve at some point, and it seems like he's taking it seriously. So I assume eventually we're going to start to see him throw better hooks if he can keep the gravy train rolling tonight. And will we see it tonight? I don't know. I think it could be a huge weapon for him in this fight instead of just relying upon that right hand, overhand right. I think Tyron Woodley's smart enough. He's going to be looking for that punch. And Jake Paul's going to have to offer something different in terms of just looking for that overhand right. And a nice way to change it up and set up that overhand right in another way is starting off with your left hook. You know, so if Tyron Woodley comes in recklessly at some point in his fight or takes a chance and risk and blitzes Jake Paul, instead of looking for that overhand right, how about start off with the left hook, a nice tight left hook, and pivot out, referencing Floyd Mayweather versus Ricky Hatton. Ricky Hatton, you know, is being very aggressive, backs up, you know, Mayweather to the corner. Ricky Hatton goes for it, and then Mayweather pivots out with a hook, check hook, boom, puts him out. Puts him on the floor. You know, that could be a huge weapon for Jake Paul in this fight. You know, I think Tyron Woodley is going to take his chances when the right opportunity comes. And he's going to be looking for that overhand right. I think he has a counter right hand for Jake Paul waiting for him. So why not catch him off balance? Because the way I did see some training footage of Tyron Woodley doing a little bit of work, and one of the things I saw is he's slipping to the left and he's sneaking in his own right hand when his opponent throws a right hand. So that's probably the counter he's gonna have waiting for Jake Paul's right hand. If I'm Jake Paul, this is a perfect opportunity to kind of switch it up. You know, the danger of slipping to your left first is, yeah, you're kind of lining yourself up with your opponent's right hand. But if you slip enough, you can get past that right hand and land one of your own, right, and get out of harm's way. But, you know, honestly, if I'm Jake Paul and I seen that, I'd be like, you know what? If Tyron Woodley's looking to land that right hand over mine, maybe I can slip to the left. Or maybe what I can do is check hook him. Tyron Woodley's going to be leaning to his left. He might be off balance just a little bit. And it might not be a knockout blow, but maybe it's a check hook. It catches, it's a flash knockdown. Check him with that left hook. Check him with that left hook. I think that would be the perfect response. And then come back with your money punch later. Okay, you shown him the left hook a couple times. Every time he's tried to come and attack, Tyron Woodley's like, oh shit, like I didn't expect that. And then the next time he comes in, now you drop your right hand. You drop the bomb on him. and you catch him off guard, catch him slipping. But, you know, like I said, I don't know if Tyron Wood, he said his boy's going to release a video later today. I don't know if he already did it, and I just haven't seen it. But he looks phenomenal shadow boxing. He looks in phenomenal training in Tyron Woodley. But, you know, I don't really care. And obviously Jake Paul doesn't look as good. But I don't care what you can do on the mitts. I don't care what you can do on the bag. I don't care what you can do in shadow boxing. Ultimately, what's the end-all, be-all is what you do in that ring. And I know Jake Paul, he looks fairly decent when he gets in the ring. He doesn't look like he does when he's, you know, hitting the bag, or he looks kind of sloppy at times with his technique. But, you know, what matters is what you do in that ring. And he's doing pretty decent when he jumps in that ring and he's knocking people out. So, to me, T. Wood looks phenomenal. I saw one of his shadow boxing footage, I think, yesterday. He looks very sharp. He looks very quick. He looks very athletic. It looks like he picked up a lot from Mayweather's team. But, you know, it's one thing to sit there and fucking shadow box nicely, but it's a different thing when you got to put the gloves on and jump into the ring. You know, the way you train is not necessarily in terms of the way you look when you're shadow boxing isn't necessarily going to translate to the ring. You know, so who am I going to pick for this fight? Fuck, man. It's an unfair fight to call, but we got to have balls here. This is what I do. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to give it by default to Jake Paul. I think there's a good chance Woodley can win too. You know, and maybe sober up Jake Paul and let him know, like, hey, motherfucker, you're fucking with a real fighter now. You're fucking with somebody who has a little bit more athletic ability than some of the guys you have, but is oriented in the fighting world, and somebody who can strike to a certain degree, not Ben Askren. Like when I hit you with something hard, we'll see how good your chin is, and we'll see how you respond. Are you going to want to go back to your fucking yacht and make your YouTube videos, or are you going to bite down on that mouthpiece and get ready to fight? And so I think Tyron Woodley can do it, man. I'm not counting him out. But I think Jake Paul is a very smart kid. I think he's done his homework. I think his team's done his homework. And I don't think he would have taken this fight if he didn't think he had a good chance at winning. But, you know, everybody could be completely fucking fooled right now by Jake Paul and his antics, and he may get exposed, you know, for the first time. And he may be biting off a little bit more than he can chew, and he may be underestimating Woodley. That could be a possibility. But, you know, there's so much money on the line for Jake Paul that I just don't understand why they would pick a fight for him to where it was literally very, very dangerous. You know, now, like I said, maybe Jake Paul is completely delusional, and maybe he's calling all the shots, and maybe he has he's completely overestimating his abilities in terms of what he can do as a fighter. But like I said, he's a businessman at the end of the day. He is a fighter as well, but he's a businessman. And I don't think he would have taken this fight if he wasn't convinced that he was going to win. I guarantee you that, especially if he wins, I would not be shocked if he had a lot of intel on Tyron Woodley, sparring footage of him boxing, and he saw him and he was like, you know what? I can beat this guy. This dude has lots of money, has lots of influence, has lots of power, has lots of connections. You know, you're crazy if you don't think, you know, he may be able to get access to certain videos, sparring footage of Tyron Woodley going to a boxing gym or something of the sort. And maybe not, you know, maybe not. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But I tend to believe that Tyron Woodley or Jake Paul sitting back and his team sitting back, and they had certain intel on Tyron Woodley, and they were like, you know what? This is a nice matchup for you, bro. I think you can get away with another win here. It's going to be a little bit more risky. You know, he can throw hands to a certain degree. You know, he's a better striker than Ben Askren, ex-UFC welterweight champ. You know, this is a good one. There's a narrative there. He's friends with Ben Askren as well. You know, you guys were talking shit before the match. I just think they're lining Tyron. They chose him for a reason. Just like Jake Paul said, he's the chosen one to get his ass beat. I think it's somewhat of a 50-50 fight. I think you can't go wrong with any fighter. If I'm going to make a bet, man, I'd bet on Woodley. There's lots of leverage to it. But, lots of upside if he wins. But ultimately, man, I'm going to go out on a limb. And I understand I might get egg on my face by making this, but I think Jake Paul is going to win. I think 3 years of hardcore boxing, even though he hasn't been taking boxing matches, he doesn't have a big resume in terms of his experience. I believe he's in the gym. I believe he's getting it done in there. You can compensate for that lack of experience if you have the resources, if you know the people, and you can bring in different fighters to work with you, and you can get good sparring in. At the end of the day, if you're having sparring sessions and you're going hard, that emulates a fight. It's a little bit different. You're in front of a crowd, right? When you get to the actual fight, there's a little bit more pressure and all eyes on you. But this kid's used to having eyes on him. He loves having eyes on him. He loves being infamous. He loves playing the heel. So I don't think that's going to be so much of an issue for him. Now, maybe it changes. I think they're going to have a crowd at this fight and it's going to be one of the first professional fights to where, he has a crowd actually watching him. But if anything, that might help him. I think this kid loves the spotlight. I think he loves the attention. I don't think the pressure is going to be too much for him. I think the only thing that could be an issue for Jake Paul in terms of pressure is what happens when his game plan doesn't work. What happens if that overhand right, okay, maybe he lands it, but it doesn't get Tyron Woodley out. Is he going to panic? Is he going to have another go-to strategy? Is he going to be able to set something else up? Right now, I look at it, yes, he's a professional boxer, but I think he's a good amateur. Now, tonight, he can prove he's a significantly better boxer than I think he is, especially, and look, he might knock Woodley out within 2 rounds. He might knock him out. And we're still going to have that question, well, yeah, Jake Paul, you beat another UFC fighter, MMA fighter. I don't hold that against him. He's just starting his career. But nonetheless, that's going to be the narrative. Yeah, you beat him. You knocked him out. But, go face a boxer and, let's see how you do then. And obviously, when you face a good boxer, he's not going to you're not going to get any gimmies. He's going to be defensively responsible. A good defensive fighter knows how to nullify power. Let's reference Andre Ward versus Sergey Kovalev, the Crusher. Kovalev was dominating everybody across from him, knocking them the fuck out. Andre Ward comes, being the skilled technician that he is, understands distance, timing, understood he needed to drag Kovalev to the later rounds, work his body, and sap his power, and then finish him. I don't know how deep Jake Paul's game is, man. I don't at this point. And, what happens if Tyron Woodley weathers the storm? Is Jake Paul going to panic? Is he going to be like, oh, shit, what do I do now? I don't know what to go to. I can't hit him with the overhand right, or my overhand, he was able to take my power. Like, what now? And, we'll see. We'll see. But who knows? Maybe he does have a deeper game. Maybe he can do a little bit more in terms of his ring IQ, because that's usually the amateur level, right? A lot of amateur, they have their setups, they have their go-tos, but it's not developed. There's not too many branches on their tree, because that's what a professional fighter is able to do. They have many different setups. They have many things they can go to. And when one thing doesn't work, okay, let's branch off to something else. Okay, that doesn't work. Let's branch off to something else. Let's set it up this way. Or maybe we grow a branch from the branch a branch we started off on. Okay, we grow here and we got that set up. Okay, we nailed it. Now we go to the next thing. We branch off from that. Okay, got it. Go to the next thing. Oh, well, that didn't work. Okay, let's see another branch. That's the thing. You have to. It's like a chess match in there. And I don't know if Jake Paul showed he can play checkers. You know, he set up that jab to the body against Ben Askren, and overhand right against Nate Robinson. He beautifully stepped back, timed his overhand right. He noticed that from Nate Robinson. You know, threw a beautiful, I think, uppercut hook on the ropes. You know, so we know he can play checkers, but can he play chess? In chess, you have to have many moves ahead of your opponent and many different reactions and responses, you know, whether your setups work or they don't. And even if they work, that doesn't necessarily mean that takes your opponent out the fight and you're going to knock them out. So what do you do next? Do you go back to the same thing? Because I think Tyron Woodley is smart enough to see that coming. But, you know, if I'm Tyron Woodley, I'm looking for that counter right hand, slipping through his guard and throwing my right hand when he wants to throw his right hand. You know, and if I'm Tyron Woodley, I'm going to be patient. I'm going to be Tyron Woodley. I'm going to do what got me to the dance in the UFC. I was patient, and I waited for my right opportunity to counter. That's what I'm going to do. And I think he should bring it to this fight, because what I would be trying to do if I'm Tyron Woodley is put Jake Paul on blast. Okay, you think you're a fighter? Let's see what happens when what you want to do doesn't work. Let's see what happens. Let's see what you do then. And we'll see who the real fighter is. So that would be my approach. But like I said, I'm going to go with Jake Paul. It's not easy for me to say that, but I'm going to go with Jake Paul. Based off of the business aspect, I don't think they would have chosen Tyron Woodley. I don't think they would be trying to risk this fucking huge money train that's going to continue to build if they didn't think Jake Paul had a really good chance at beating Tyron Woodley. This thing can blow up to something very big for Jake Paul if he continues to make the right moves for his career. I know everybody wants to see him against a really good boxer. I know, like, in the next match, I know people want to see him, you know, take on a guy who's strictly a boxer. I don't think he's ready for that yet, man. I don't think he's ready. Well, he's ready for that, but you got to understand, he's trying to make big fights, big money fights, because I do believe there's cruiserweights out there that no-name cruiserweights, professional fighters, that would fuck Jake Paul up. But what would be the point of taking a fight that you most likely going to lose, and it's not even going to draw a huge crowd? So it's tough. Jake Paul has to he has to look for fights that are going to make money, but fights that he can build. And honestly, he probably won't be taking on genuine matches with guys in his own weight class unless he dominates for the next few years, until he develops to the point to where, okay, now he's actually contending for a fucking title in his own weight class. But his package might just be taking fights that can make money and fights to where he's going to have huge advantages, at least, if not, you know, against a UFC fighter, against a boxer that he's bigger than. You know, so it's kind of a weird thing, man, but he has a lot of money to potentially make, and if the motivation's there, he can keep this train rolling. And I think he has a few more fights in him. I don't think he's going to do this for like 10 years. I could be wrong. But I don't think there's much room for him. There's little room for error at this point. Because, okay, he beats Tyron Woodley. Who do you go up against next? That's going to hold the same pay-per-view power. I would personally go for someone like Nate Diaz. You know, I think the next step he should take is taking on a very good striker, somebody who's predominantly known as a striker in the UFC. I guess something like a Nate Diaz, or maybe one of the top fighters, but it's going to be hard to get one of the type strikers in the UFC to come over because they're going to be under contract. You know, Conor McGregor, that would be a nice matchup. I wouldn't be looking to take on any boxers. And if you are looking to take on any boxers, you have to set the stage for him. I can see him taking on Tommy Fury eventually. I can see that. That's why they bring in Tommy Fury, put him on the undercard, bringing him over from the UK and showcasing him to the United States and making him go up against Jake Paul's sparring partner. They're gauging him. They're sizing Tommy Fury up. and they're possibly trying to set up a matchup between the two in the future. And to me, that would be probably the first boxer Jake Paul should take on. He's in his weight class. You know, it's a nice move for him to make when he wants to make that transition to an actual boxer. And it'll be even more impressive because he's going to be facing a guy his own size. So, you know, if I'm Jake Paul, I'm looking for fights like Nate Diaz, you know, taking a few more MMA fighters. And then I'm going to step up to Tommy Fury. And, you know, then I'm going to look for a couple more boxers, maybe guys who retired or on the back end with names, looking for Conor McGregor. And then eventually, you know, if he's dead ass serious about being a contender, maybe 5 to 10 years or 5 to 7 years down the line, well, maybe he can start contending for a title. But that's a pipe dream at this point. You know, that's getting way ahead of ourselves, and that's if he can execute and keep the motivation and keep winning. That's a long shot, but this kid's crazy. I mean, who would have seen this coming? So I can't sit there and scoff at it and laugh at it because it could be possible. But I like Tyron Woodley, man. I don't want to see him lose. I don't want to see him become a meme. But I will take 3 years of hardcore boxing, even if it's just sparring predominantly in the ring with other guys, than even over a guy who's a decorated UFC champion or an ex-UFC welterweight champion who was considered one of the greats. It's just a different sport, man. It entails something different. And believe it or not, a really good amateur boxer will beat a professional UFC striker in boxing. That's just the way it is. And there's a lot more skill and technique that's required before you can just jump over from the MMA or the UFC to be able to take on a fight like that. It's just what it is. Why you think he's making lots of money now? Why you think he's winning? Because he understands that. He understands that boxing has a different level of striking than UFC. That's why he's calling out these guys. You know, Mike Perry. That's another one that popped in my head. That might be a good fight for Jake Paul. That might be the next couple. But you know, look, man. He's brilliant business plan, I think, and that's why I'm picking him. He's smart. He could lose. I think he could lose, but he's smart. He knows what he's doing. I don't think they would have chosen Tyron Woodley if they thought that he couldn't beat him. And it would not shock me if Jake Paul has some footage of Tyron Woodley sparring in the boxing ring. He's like, yeah, I can beat him. I can get him. But who knows? Even if that is the case, Tyron Woodley's been training. He's very athletically gifted. And who knows? Maybe Tyron Woodley picked the sport up real quick. Good enough to beat Jake Paul. So he's taking it seriously. I don't think he's taking it lightly. So we'll see, man. I could be wrong, but that's my prediction. Jake Paul over Tyron Woodley. I think that Jake Paul can get a knockout. And or it can be, the fight can get ugly. Both of them get sloppy as the round goes on, and they both don't really have much of an IQ, a deep IQ when it comes to the sport. So it might turn into a clinch fest, and it might get very sloppy and ugly. It would not shock me. It could get boring. But I'm going to say Jake Paul by knockout. But it would not shock me at all if Tyron Woodley does that himself, knocks out Jake Paul. Wouldn't shock me. But we'll see. That's why we're watching, man. All I know is, whoever's right, comment below, talk shit. Look, if I'm wrong, I'm gonna make my video. Y'all can talk shit to me. This is why I do this. This is fun, man. It's fun to just be involved with this and talk shit. It reminds me of being in high school at the lunch table and talking about your favorite teams, NBA, NFL, or matches coming up in the UFC or boxing. And if you're right about your prediction, you got all the rights to talk shit and have fun. So I will be making a video for the post fight and discussing it. And if I'm wrong, you're welcome to come and throw shit in my face. And if I'm right, I'm going to say I told you so. But Jake Paul by knockout. He continues the gravy train, and we'll see who the next opponent will be. It's your boy HB, final round. Comment below, like the video, subscribe, get at me.